Whole numbers multiplication. Example 1. Multiply the following. 5 times 7. Now, if we know our times tables, we know 5 times 7 is equal to 35. And that would be our answer. But before we kind of continue on, I want us to look at this in a different way. So we have below a 5 rows. So this is row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which represents this 5. Then we have 7 columns, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So each row includes 7 items in it, or 7. There are 7 boxes. So what we're asking is how many total boxes are there if we have 5 rows with 7 in each one. So what we're doing is really just repeated addition. We're just adding 7 5 times. So it's just another way to look at it. We can add this row to this one, and you just keep adding till you get a total of 35. Because this 5 times 7, as we can see, if you were to draw each one or count each one, you would get 35. So it's just another way to look at it. It's just how 5 times 7, we can look at it in this 2D way where we see we have 5 rows times 7, or with 7 inside each one. And so when you go 5 times 7, it's really equal to 35. And this is how you can kind of see it visually. So that would also equal to 35. So you can just think of it in terms of you have 5 groups that 7 items in each, and you're just adding each group together, which is equal to 35. So let's look at another example. Example 2. Susan has to commute 14 miles to work from home. How many miles does she travel in 1 week? Assume a work week is 5 days. Use the following to solve. 28 times 5. So notice we had 28. Well, from home to work is 14 miles. But then she has to also go back home. So that's another 14 miles. So 14 miles plus 14 miles is equal to 28. So we get 28, and then we're going to multiply by 5. So to do this problem, we're going to set it up. We're going to line up our place values. So we have our 1s, and then we have our 10s. So we just have the 110. Then we start with the number on the bottom, and we're going to go ahead and multiply it, the top number on the far right. So 5 times 8 is equal to 40. So we put a 0 below. We're actually going to signify that this is carried over, which is a 4. Now, 5 times 2 is 10, plus this 4 is 14. So we get 140 miles that she would commute each week to and from work. So this is our final solution. Example 3. A person has a payment plan of $122 a week for 10 weeks. What is the total cost of the person will pay after those 10 weeks? So what we're doing is we are taking 122, and we're going to go ahead and multiply it by 10. So before we do the math trick, let's just line this up. We have 122 times 10. So this is how we would set up our problem. Now, we have the 1s, the 10s, and then the 100 spot. So we lined up our place value, and then we're going to start with the bottom number on the far right. So we have 0. 0 times 2 is 0, because anything times 0 is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. 0 times 1 is 0. Now, something that's really, really important is that anytime you move on from, say, the 1s to the 10s, you need to put a placeholder value there. So you start with a 0 there, and then you can move on. Then we go on to this 1 times 2, which is 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. And then we go ahead and, since we're done with the bottom of multiplying the top, we go ahead and add these numbers together. Now, anything on the top is going to be 0. So really it's just going to be this bottom row, because 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. 0 plus 2 is 2. 1 is just 1. So we would say the total is 1,220. So this is the correct way to do it, but there's going to be a little trick here. So anytime, so we'll go math, trick. So anytime you have a number and you're going to multiply it by another number that ends in a 0, like 10, we can go ahead and just, what we do is we put this out on the side. Because what happens is that you see this whole row of zeros, then we had to move on to our placeholder of 0. So this accounts for all of this steps right here by putting this out here. So what we do here is we just put the 0 out, and then we just multiply everything. 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1. And we're left with 1,220. So we got to the same answer, and the reason is we only had to multiply one number throughout the whole top because we put the 0 out here. Now, this only works with numbers ending in 0. So you could do this with 20, 30, 40, 100, 1,000. The point is you just put the zeros out and you account for them by putting them right below. So this is how we got to the answer, and this is how you do it the proper way. Now let's do another example. But before we go to our example, let's also show how we can show different ways to multiply. So this problem here, that's 258 times 24, we can represent this as 258 with a dot times 24. This is one method. Another method would be to show it like this, where you put them in parentheses. This also means we need to multiply the two together. And of course, we have our way that we show below. So these are 3 different options to show multiplication. Now let's do the problem. So we have 258 times 24. Notice that we lined up our ones together, we lined up our tens, and then we just have our 100. Now notice this does not end in a 0, so we can't do our trick. So we're going to have to multiply it out, all the way out. So we start with this 4. Let's just do it like this. So 4 times 8 is 32. So we put a 2 below, carry the 3. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 3 is 23. So we put the 3 below, carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. So because we don't have another number, we're just going to put that one right there, and then the 0. Now we go on. But as we move on, we need to put a placeholder of 0. Then let's move on to this 2. 2 times 8 is 16. 6 below, carry the 1. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. So you put a 1 below, carry the 1. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So now we go ahead and add these numbers together. Because we're done, because we multiplied the 4 out, we put our placeholder of 0, then we multiplied the 2 out. So here we go, 2 plus 0 is 2. 3 plus 6 is 9. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus 5 is 6. So we end up with 6,192 as our final answer.